Why don't you go see your boyfriend?
Yeah, he's got a nice room. He won't have it long. He left a call for 7 a.m.
Listen properly.
Can you please look up this site?
See if we can figure out something.
Hi, I'm sorry. I was just telling Vaughan that I'm supposed to be going back into this very serious conversation and I'm having a little dance party to my intro here. Sorry. That is not very professional. Also, it feels like the lighting is so weird today. Like the new running entrance. It was not on purpose. Just want to go back to the top. Little Miss was first, but I redirected to the wrong place. And so the portal broke. I was panicking. I was trying to make sure it's recording. I've got Judge Simpson recording. He's got a trial of sorts with an officer on the stand. I'll make sure we circle back to that once I've let the recording finish. So I was a little bit yeah. Anyway. Trish Moore, I've been freaking on a wild search. Thought I found you once, then realized it wasn't the live. So back clicking and hunting. Well, I'm very happy you're here. We need to start tuning in friends and family if we know they've done something wrong. Turning in friends and family if we know they've done something wrong. Police are getting no cooperation from people who witnessed the event. Someone knows the 3 who did it. What is this about? Okay, I'm not going to say that word. There was a multiple person incident. You know what actually needs to happen? What actually needs to happen is that these sorts of words, back to our earlier conversation, these and conversations relating to things that YouTube does not want us to speak about, they need to not be blocked because not talking about it breeds problems. I got a 30-minute notification. I got 0 notification for my live, and that is not just on my account, obviously, but on my spare account that I check, no notification whatsoever at all. Little Miss, I actually tried to go back in and paste it, but it was too new, so it wouldn't let me click on it, and I was rushing out to dancing. Anyway, dancing was super fun. We haven't been in a long time, so we're getting back into it. It was fun. It was very fun. But then I came back and I was like, da 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 da, while the intro was playing, and then I had to run in. Hey, Lisa. Hey, Chini. Who have I missed? Here's what I got. Watch Vicky McCallum live in 30 minutes. Lilith, I missed you. Hi. That is so cool. Okay, we have a lot to catch up on. We're going to have to try skip breaks, etc. I did record it just in case, but it looks like it's all still there. So I think we're good. I was going to skip forward to where the defense speaks here. However, while I was getting there, I saw her face, and this is something I didn't notice the first time. She looks like she is holding on by a thread. I did not notice this. I don't know if it's because I was like trying to rush to get things ready. I don't remember her looking so devastated. And like, if I say this in the unfiltered way, it's going to sound rude, but I don't mean it in a rude way. She looks older than 25 in this moment. She looks like she has seen more than she should have at this age. Okay, let's crack on. That swallow is tears.
A couple more questions, ma'am. As just getting back to Michael Ricci's social media, did you, you indicated at some point it all kind of disappeared, is that right?
Yes.
And then sometime thereafter, did you see his name pop up again and a kind of a new social media account came up?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor.
Is that the foundation for how she knows this?
Can you describe how you knew this information that you just described?
I believe it was a shared Facebook account.
With who?
Him and Christine.
And prior to when he had his old social media, was that a shared account, if you know?
No.
Thank you.
Cross exam.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Having lived at the Ricci home at 679 Moraine Street for 4 years, you're fairly well familiar with the layout of the house, and you talked a lot about it on direct examination.
Yes.
I want to talk about that living room, dining room area along the side of the house. As you stated, there is a transition between that room and the kitchen, and there's 2 stairs.
Yes.
And is that about a foot, would you say, or a little bit more than a foot between the sunken living room, dining room, and that kitchen?
Yes.
How tall was Michael?
6'2",
Okay. And Christine?
5'2".
Okay. In 2007, did you become, I'm sorry, 2017, when you began to live at the Ricci home, did you learn during that year that Ms. Ricci had some sort of condition that required her to wear a brace on one arm?
Yes.
Okay, you were aware of that?
Yes.
And did she wear such a brace, like, basically through most of the time that you lived with her?
Yes, but she didn't always have them on.
Okay, but that was something for an ongoing condition that she had.
Yes.
That event where you mentioned in end of 2018, where you said they had an argument, they came back in, Christine had an injured hand, correct? And Michael had, you said, some swelling near his eye?
Yes.
The result of that, the injury that you saw was some swelling by his eye, correct?
It was a bruise.
A bruise. Had it already formed a bruise by the time you saw it, or only later?
Probably later. 'Cause
Okay.
It happened late at night, so I didn't see either of them until the next day.
Till the next day. Okay. But Christine was fairly well hurt by that interaction, right?
Yes.
She went to the hospital
Yes.
and she had like a cast on after that for weeks.
Yes.
That took place, as you say, at the end of 2018. So that would have been like 2.5, 3 months after the affair.
Yes.
You said a couple months after the affair, Michael started going to AA.
Yes.
He went multiple times a week.
Yes.
He got a sponsor.
Yes.
He worked the steps, correct?
Yes.
He went to a men's group.
I believe so.
He also did commitments, which is when people speak at other events, right?
Yes.
Right. He stayed sober.
Yes.
He also started to go see a mental health counselor.
Yes.
He went to see a psychiatrist as part of that,
Yes.
and he was prescribed some medications.
Yes.
And as far as you know,
Is that the basis?
May we be heard at sidebar?
Yes.
and that Michael claimed to have some memory problems in the aftermath of the affair, correct?
Yes.
Didn't he claim that in 2018 that he were long periods of time that he didn't have memory about?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Are you aware that they went for a neurological scan?
No.
Okay. Now, at this time, you were working full time, correct?
Yes.
You were also living in the basement, right?
Yes.
As you mentioned before, there was a lot of fighting going on, right?
Yes.
You were probably trying to spend as much time as possible outside the house. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
So there could have been things like, for example, a neurological scan or other things that you might not have known about. Is that fair?
Yes.
Now, Michael's schedule, you said during direct examination, was that when he worked for the fire department, he'd work one day, correct? And then he'd have 2 days off.
Yes.
Then he'd work another 24-hour shift, right?
Yes.
And then he'd have 4 days off.
Yes.
So essentially, and that was every week. And if he wasn't working at MCC, that schedule, other than maybe a couple side jobs that he might have picked up, that's what he worked during the course of a week, right?
Yes.
And so he would have approximately like 5 days off every week.
Yes.
During that same period of time, meaning after the affair, Christine was doing Zumba, correct?
Yes.
And then, and as you said, she was going all over to sort of do Zumba, maybe teaching classes in various parts of town
Yes.
and even doing cruises, correct?
Yes.
After COVID hit, most of her Zumba business moved into an online sort of format, right?
Yes.
And after Michael Jr. left the house in 2019, she was essentially doing most of her Zumba classes out of what was his old room.
Eventually, yes.
Yeah. And she'd be teaching multiple classes a day.
Yes.
And also, she began doing classes at Quincy College, didn't she?
Yes.
First part-time
Yes.
in the end of 2019, right? And then in 2020, during COVID, she started going full-time.
Yes.
So when you say that she was up in her room a lot, again, you're downstairs in the basement, right? Or on the first floor most of the time when you're in the Moraine Street house, right?
Yes.
So when you say that she's up in her room, what you mean is that she was on the second floor and you didn't really see her, right?
Yes.
But she was also taking online classes full time in 2020, right?
Yes.
And doing those from an upstairs computer.
Yes.
And also she was running her Zumba classes from an upstairs bedroom.
Yes.
Okay. And she was essentially between the school, full-time school, doing the homework, plus the Zumba stuff. She had like more than a full plate, didn't she?
Yes.
Yeah. And this was at a time when Michael Sr. was only working, as you say, maybe 2 24-hour shifts over the period of a 7-day period.
Yes.
And also, at the time you were in 2018, you were 19 years old,
Yes.
and so was Angel.
Angel's 2 years older than me.
Oh, so he was 21.
Yes.
Okay, and Michael, little Michael, he was 18, 19 years old, right?
Yes.
And Sophia was 14,
Yes.
right? So a lot of people in that house were adults capable of tidying up on their own, right?
Yes.
Right. A lot of those people had a lot more free time than Christine did at that time.
Yes.
You mentioned that a lot of the arguments and throughout the arguments were about the affair. Is that your testimony?
Yes.
It was also, though, about the fact that Michael was claiming that he didn't remember details about the affair, right?
Yes.
And not remembering large amounts of information about that period of time in general, right?
Yes.
And so, although it was about the affair, it was about oftentimes learning new information that hadn't come out until that particular discussion.
Yes.
It was sort of hard for Christine to get her arms around what exactly had happened because she was constantly learning new information. Is that fair?
Yes.
Now, in the aftermath of the disclosure of the affair, is that when, from your perspective, Michael stopped working with Mac at MCC?
I'm not sure how long after.
Okay. Was it sometime in that area of end of 2018?
Maybe soon after.
Okay, like a month or two? Best of
I'm
your
not sure.
recollection?
I'm not sure.
Okay. But it certainly wasn't like 6 or 7 months. It was a fairly short order after the events.
Yes.
Now, you left the house in December of 2020, is that right?
Yes.
You broke up with Angel in December of 2020.
Yes.
When you left the house in December of 2020, you still had a lot of your stuff at that home, right?
Yes.
And that stuff ended up getting moved into the living room, dining room area up on that first floor.
No.
Did you have a stuffed moose? Was that one of the things you had?
Yes.
Okay.
No worries. Five, six, maybe in there. No. 5, 6, 7, 8.
Well, in any event, the stuffed moose that you had, wasn't that up in that room up on the living room, dining room area?
Yes. It was downstairs for some time, but we moved it upstairs.
But after you moved out, it was brought upstairs, wasn't it?
Yes.
And there was also some of your boxes that you ended up retrieving after you went back to get your stuff that were up in that living room, dining room area, right?
Yes.
And also, Michael Jr. had moved out in June of 2019, and a lot of his stuff had gotten moved downstairs also, right?
Yes.
When she made his room into a Zumba room.
Yes.
Now, a lot of the things that you had mentioned that were in the photographs of the kitchen, there was a lot of projects that were sort of half done in the kitchen. Is that fair to say?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure? Okay. Was the kitchen area, because Michael was working that sort of 24 hours on, 2 days off, 24 hours on, 4 days off schedule, it was pretty common for him to do the cooking, wasn't it, during that period of time?
Yes.
And in fact, the cooking knives were actually considered by the family sort of Michael's knives, weren't they?
Yes.
And a lot of the way that the kitchen was organized, that was all by Michael's, what Michael thought was the way to organize it, right? He was in charge of that.
Yes.
The event that took place in May of 2020, it was your understanding that that was an attempt that Christine made to hurt herself, right?
Yes.
Nothing further.
Any redirect or it's 1 o'clock now, so should we take a break or should we do the redirect? Over or under 5 minutes?
I think under.
Let's keep on going.
Okay. Ms. Freeman, defense counsel asked you about the incident in which the defendant told you she hit Michael Ricci in the face with her hand, thereby injuring her hand, correct?
Yes.
And that he further asked you if she went to the hospital for that injury, correct?
Yes.
As far as you knew, based on her statements, the injury was not from Michael. She created the injury to herself by hitting him in his face, correct?
Yes.
Defense counsel was asking you about medications of people in the home. Were you aware of whether or not Christine was on many medications?
Yes.
Did you make any personal observations, Ms. Freeman, during your 4 years of living in the Ricci household of any memory issues with Michael Ricci?
No. Only after the affair.
And in regards to after the affair, what specifically were his memory issues relating to?
The
If she
affair.
knows.
If she knows, she can answer.
The affair.
And specifically, do you recall the defendant asking him specifics that he couldn't remember answers to?
Yes.
Based on your observations of when you were living in the Ricci household for 4 years, did you ever, and let me ask you, were you ever a bartender?
No.
Did you ever drink alcohol at the time you were living there?
Yes.
Did you ever observe people to be alcoholics
No.
in your lifetime?
Yes.
What, if any, observations of any alcoholics did you observe in the Ricci household?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained as to that question.
Did you ever observe Michael Ricci to abuse or overdrink?
Objection,
Alcohol.
Your Honor.
She can answer to her own observations.
No.
Limited to your own observations.
No.
You indicated defense counsel was asking you about when you answered on direct that the defendant after the affair slowly started leaving her room less and less. Do you remember that line of questioning?
Yes.
And then defense counsel asked you, well, it was because she was teaching Zumba in her room. You remember that line of questioning?
Yes.
Was that in fact your understanding that she was locked in her bedroom teaching Zumba?
Objection, Your Honor.
Or
Rephrase that question.
what was your understanding about why the defendant was not leaving her bedroom?
There was a few reasons. One being because of,
Objection, Your Honor.
We've gone over this before. Move on.
I will. The defendant, just last question about this. The defendant was not teaching Zumba in her bedroom, correct?
not in her bedroom.
And defense counsel was asking you about the stuffed moose line of questioning. You remember that?
Yes.
And he further asked you, upon moving out, you moved all, he asked if you had moved all your stuff up to kind of the main living area. And what was your answer?
So I hadn't moved my stuff from downstairs to upstairs. Those boxes were from when I had moved out of my house officially. And those boxes were left in the living room.
And are you referring to showing you Exhibit 7? Is that one of the boxes?
No, it was everything behind the couch towards the doors in the back.
Back here?
Yes.
Okay. Show you what was marked as Exhibit 43. Is that all your stuff?
No.
And defense counsel lastly asked you about Michael's knives, that the kitchen knives were Michael's. You remember that line of questioning?
Yes.
The knife that you saw Christine Ricci holding the day that she was trying to hurt herself, May of 2020, was that one of Michael's knives, if you know?
I'm not sure.
Thank you.
A recross.
That exhibit number 43 that she just showed you, that was the kitchen, correct?
Yes.
Michael's domain, right?
Yes.
Nothing further.
The witness may step down. All right, jurors, we'll stop here for lunch and bring it back at 2:10.
Court
Nice
authorizes
lunch.
the jurors to place your notebooks in the chair and exit this room. Seated.
Both the things that the 2 o'clock list have been asked to come at 1:45. We'll see if they can get here at that time. They're both short, so I expect we'll be able to start right on time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Court, all rise.
Okay. So we are behind. So thankfully we get to skip lunch. But I'm not skipping dinner. And I have to chew with only one side of my face. Okay. They're not back. Okay, I'm gonna go live and then I'm just gonna
Particular time.
Oh,
If I wasn't doing anything, sure, I'd go with her.
Do you recall a particular time shopping with her and going to a Home Goods in 2020?
Yes.
Can you tell us about?
did they do it again?
What's going on, officer? Stuff right there, man. Basically, raise your right hand.
Good afternoon. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony and the evidence that you give to the court and the jury from that now and from the Commonwealth and the Senate bar to the truth, full fulfilling the truth of God and faith? Thank you.
Okay, I think this is
You
our
may
plan.
proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
In a loud, clear voice, could you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your first and last name?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Lee Rivera. I am the investigator from the Department of Children and Families, LEIGHRIVERA,
And your date of birth?
4/12/81.
And where are you currently employed? I know you just stated it, but if you could just.
Department of Children and Families, Plymouth, Mass.
And how long have you been employed by the department?
11 years.
What did you do before you were employed there?
I was a teacher.
And as it relates to your current title at the Department of Children and Families right now, what is your title?
Response worker.
What does that mean?
So we receive 51As and then we go out and investigate the 51As to determine the safety of children around the vulnerabilities in the home.
Could you explain what a 51A is?
The 51A is a report of child abuse or neglect.
Your Honor,
Yes,
I would object. Could I be heard at sidebar briefly?
yes, you may.
I'm sorry, came involved because a 51A was filed.
Correct.
I'm sorry, you were explaining what your roles were in the capacity, in your responsibilities at the Department of Children and Family. Let me move on. Are you familiar with the Ricci family?
Yes.
And when did you first, you yourself become involved with the family?
June of 2019.
And what prompted your involvement?
Michael Jr. had gone to the hospital, which resulted in a 51A being filed with the department.
And had you ever met any of the Ricci family prior to that date in June?
I did not.
And if you know, was a 51A filed by the hospital staff and that's how you became involved?
Correct.
And once the 51A was filed, what is your role at that point?
To review the report that was filed and to make contact with the family to schedule a home visit.
And is that deemed part of your investigation?
Correct.
And did you do that in this situation?
I did.
And at some point during the course of this investigation, what if at some point did you meet and speak with the defendant, Christine Ricci?
I did.
And what, if anything, did the defendant say was had happened on June 6, 2019?
So she had
Objection, Your Honor. Based on what we talked about before.
I'll see you at the side of the bench.
Ricci say had Ms. Rivera, what, if anything, did the defendant Christine Ricci say had happened on June 6, 2019?
So she had informed me that she was dwelling on the past, that her husband had had an affair the summer before when he had been drinking excessively, and she went into somewhat of a fit of a rage. She was having trouble getting over it, and that's what they were arguing about.
And did she specifically use the term she was in a fit of rage?
Correct.
And what did she claim she grabbed in her fit of rage?
She grabbed a mirror in her bedroom and smashed it.
And did she indicate anything further as to any statements she said as to anything thereafter?
I'm not sure what you're asking. I'm sorry.
Did she indicate after she was in a fit of rage and grabbed a mirror in the bedroom, smashing on the floor, did she indicate that she made any statements aloud to any family members present about being better off alive or dead?
She's made a comment that she'd be better off dead.
And at some point, as part of your investigation, did you question the defendant about any kind of physical abuse she suffers in her home at anyone's hands?
Yes.
And what did she state?
She denied any abuse whatsoever in the home. Actually made a comment that she and Michael were doing well and that they were in therapy trying to work through it.
And at that point, do you close the investigation?
The investigation was unsupported allegations, correct?
And specifically, that was for neglect and abuse?
Yes.
Nothing further?
No cross,
Cross-exam-
no cross.
cross-exam. The witness may step down. Thank you.
Right there, sir. Raise the flag. Raise your right hand.
Good afternoon. You solemnly swear that the testimony you give is the report of the jury and that are now pending in the Commonwealth and defendant cross the truth, the truth, nothing but the truth of the God. Thank you.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Hi,
Could you please tell the jurors your first and last name?
Robert Higgins,
And how old are you?
56.
If you could just speak up so that everyone can hear you into that microphone.
56.
Thank you. What city or town do you live in?
Marshfield, Massachusetts.
How long have you lived there?
30 years.
Do you work?
I do.
What do you do for work?
Self-employed. I'm a carpenter.
Okay. And do you volunteer?
I do.
What do you do for volunteer work?
I am a recovery coach for social peer recovery on a volunteer basis, certified. Sure. I'm a certified recovery coach at South Shore Peer Recovery in Situate, a nonprofit.
How long have you been a recovery coach?
3.5 years. 4.5 years. I'm sorry, 4.5 years.
Do you know Christine Ricci?
I do.
When was the first time you met Christine Ricci?
Approximately August of 2019.
And how did you meet her?
We met at a softball game.
And was the softball game something sponsored by the group that you work for?
It was.
And was she by herself when you met her or with somebody else?
The first time I met her, she was by herself.
And when you met her at this event in 2019, did you talk to her?
Yeah.
And did she explain to you why she was at the event?
Yes. A little bit.
Why was she there?
She was getting into the recovery community to support her husband, and she wanted to have fun and play ball.
And on that particular occasion, that first meeting with her, did you meet her husband?
On the first occasion?
Yes.
I did not.
Was he there at all that day at the event or at the game?
No.
At some point, did you meet her husband?
I did.
And who was her husband?
Michael Ricci.
And when did you meet Michael?
The following week.
And what was the circumstances in which you
Same
met?
circumstances at a ball game. Christine and Mike came together.
And was that another game that was sponsored by the South Shore Peer Recovery?
Yes.
Okay. And after you then met Michael, did you begin to hang around with Michael?
I did.
And how about Christine, the defendant? Did you hang out with her as well?
I did.
And can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with the two of them?
Sure.
What were you friendly with both of the individuals?
Yes, both.
As a couple and individually?
Yes.
And when you would spend time with both of them, would you be by yourself with them or with a small group of people?
It varied at different times.
And when you were with a small group of people, did you all know the people in common?
Yeah, yes, we did.
And were they all part of that sober community that is associated with the South Shore Peer Recovery?
Yes.
When you would spend time together as this sober group, what kinds of things would you guys do?
We would go bowling. We would go out to AA meetings and sponsored events and gatherings at Christine and Michael's house. And we would go, I'd take Mike out on my boat.
Now, as far as the gatherings at the Ricci household, how often would you gather at their household?
I personally hung out there a lot. But
And so
as a group, it was a gathering place for a lot of us, but I spent the most time there. I was there a lot.
And did you get to know the rest of the Ricci household?
I did.
Now, as far as your separate relationships with Michael and the defendant, first, your relationship with Michael, you mentioned that you'd take him out on your boat.
Yes.
What would you guys do out on the boat?
Go fishing.
Would it just be the two of you, or were there other people present?
Just the two of us.
And would you guys spend a lot of time talking together?
Talking, laughing.
Did you find that you had a lot in common with him, or you could share experiences with him?
Yes, we got close really quick, Christine and I, and Michael and I.
Now, this all started, you said, in the summer of 2019,
Correct.
your relationships with them?
Yes.
And kind of moving forward to the winter of 2020 and early 2021, did you notice any changes in Michael's behavior?
Yes.
Did you see him as often as you had seen him before?
In early 2020?
Well, I'll direct you to the winter of 2020 and
Yeah.
the early of 2021, right before his death.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, there was a decline in Michael's participation in the recovery community and in our personal relationship.
And so when you say decline, had you not seen him as frequently as you had before?
That's correct.
And were you concerned by that?
Very.
And so as a result of noticing that he was not participating, what did you do?
I was calling him. I was texting him. And I went over to the house actually when I hadn't heard from him, and I knocked on the door.
And how, in relation to his passing, what was that time frame that you went to the door?
3 weeks.
Was he home when you went to the house?
He was.
And did you have the occasion to see him and speak with him?
I did.
What were your observations of his physical appearance at that time?
He looked tired. He looked gaunt. Looked like he hadn't slept. His complexion was, he looked like a defeated man.
Objection, Your Honor.
All right, I'll strike he looked like a defeated man. He looked tired and gaunt.
Correct.
And so were your observations of him on this particular occasion different from how you had seen him previously? His physical
Yes,
appearance?
he didn't invite me into the house, and I could see that the house was dark and in a dismay.
And did you have a brief conversation with him at that point?
Yeah, I did.
And then you left him.
I
From that
told him that I
conversation.
loved him and that if he wanted to come to my home and stay for a while, he could.
Now, was that the last time you saw Michael?
It was.
As far as your relationship with Christine Ricci, did you have a different type of relationship with her than you did with Michael?
Yes.
How would you qualify it? Is still a friendship?
Yes.
Would you spend a lot of time talking with her?
Yes.
What kinds of things would you do when you were alone with the defendant?
She was very inquisitive into the recovery aspect of what was going on. As far as she wanted to know how Mike was addressing his sobriety and also the marital issues. And
So if I may stop you for a second, these are conversations you would have with
directly with Christine, and I would talk about her feelings and what she was going through.
And as far as the questions that you said she would ask you about the recovery process, do you have some familiarity with the AA community and the process of AA?
I do.
And did you feel you had information about AA that you could share with her?
Absolutely.
So were you able to answer her questions about the procedure, like the protocols?
I was, because the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. So yes, I shared with Christine.
And as far as also talking about, you mentioned the affair. So did you have conversations with the defendant about the affair that Michael had with another woman at some point before you met them?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Did you have conversations with the defendant about the affair that Michael had with another woman prior to you meeting them?
Yes.
And how often did you talk with her about that?
Multiple times we talked about that.
And you said she would share her feelings about what happened.
Yes.
In relation to these multiple conversations with her, did you ever share your thoughts of the whole situation with her?
I did. I had empathy, and I identified with where she was at.
And during those conversations that you would have with just the defendant, were there any times where you maybe disagreed with her position?
Sure.
And what was her reaction when you weren't as empathetic or you
Well,
disagreed?
she didn't like it. She wasn't happy about it.
As far as the things you would do with Christine, so you described you would fish with Michael, right?
Yeah.
What would you go do with Christine?
Oh, Christine and I had no driver's license at the time. And she would pick me up and take me to meetings and pick me up and take me to lunch, and we'd go shopping together. And we spent a lot of time together.
And as far as shopping, did you share that interest of kind of going to shopping places or going out shopping?
Sure. If I wasn't doing anything, sure, I'd go with her.
Do you recall a particular time shopping with her and going to a Home Goods in 2020?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Yes. Christine called me and asked me, "You want to go shopping?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And we went to Home Goods, and I said, "What are we shopping for?" And she said, "Mirrors." I said, "Okay, mirrors."
Can I see you both at the side of the bench?
Mr. Higgins, did you have the occasion to observe the Riccies as a couple?
Yes.
And did you often see them together at events or when you were hanging out with them?
I did.
And were you able to make observations of how they interact in their relationship?
Yes.
As far as going to particular events, did you often see the defendant at meetings with Michael?
Every time, yes.
Every time?
Mhm.
And in your experience in working the steps of AA and working with the sober community, is it common or is it part of the normal protocol for a spouse or a supporter to come to every meeting with the person that's engaged in the program?
It is advised that marital couples do support their spouse, but to the extent that Christine did, it was a little much.
And are there separate groups for spouses or supporters of people going through the process?
Yes, Christine and I actually attended some Al-Anon meetings together.
Now, on occasion, you said that you took Michael out on your boat and you would fish.
Correct.
Did you have the occasion to observe an interaction between Michael and the defendant while you guys were out fishing?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Mike would come fishing with me on my boat, but at 12 o'clock, he had to be back to port so that he could go on a conference call or video call with his counselor or psychologist. I'm not sure what it was. And then, so I'd have lunch on the boat, and after the appointment with his counselor, he would come back out on the boat.
And when he came back on the boat, did he have his phone with him?
Yes.
And did you have the occasion to observe a conversation he was having with his wife?
Your Honor,
Yes.
may we approach sidebar?
Yes?
You indicated that you were able to overhear that he was having a conversation with his wife.
Correct.
And that the conversation was about that therapy appointment that just had occurred,
Correct.
that he left the boat to go take the call for. Is that
Yes.
fair to say?
Correct.
And as far as what you could overhear, what you observed in that conversation, did the defendant seem upset?
Michael was upset. Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm asking about Christine. Did she seem upset?
Oh, Christine was upset too. Yes.
And could you hear her asking questions about the appointment itself?
I could hear her coming through the phone. Yeah. Asking what the appointment was about and what he said, what he told his psychologist or counselor.
And did you observe any changes in Michael's demeanor while he was on that phone call with her?
Yeah.
And while you could hear her on the phone, could you observe any changes in the tone of her voice?
No.
Okay. Did she ask the question once or multiple times?
Multiple. She wanted to know what was going
There's
on.
no further question before you. Thank you, sir. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Cross exam?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
You mentioned on your direct examination that the only thing that's necessary in order for someone to be accepted into AA is
The only requirement, yes,
the only requirement is that someone sincerely want to stop drinking.
has the desire. Correct.
Correct. And it's true, isn't it, that the first realization that helps you start AA is the idea that you are powerless over alcohol. Right?
Correct.
And that your life has become unmanageable as a result of alcohol.
Correct.
And that is a personal decision and a personal realization that the individual alcoholic comes to.
That's right.
No other person can say whether another person is or is not an alcoholic.
They can say it,
But
it doesn't make it so. Correct.
correct.
You're correct.
And it's true that the definition used by AA doesn't say 4 drinks a day or 5 drinks a day. It's this very searching personal determination, correct?
That is correct.
And you can be an alcoholic, for example, even if you drink whiskey, if you drink wine, or even if you just drink beer, right?
It's not what you drink or how much you drink. It's what happens to you when you do drink that determines.
Correct. And that's something that the individual alcoholic, through the process of AA, is encouraged to make realizations about themselves. And then that's the first step to making changes, right?
That is correct.
There are some people who never enter recovery until their alcoholism has reached such a degree that they're in a really desperate position, right?
Right.
There are some people that never enter recovery.
Correct.
And there are people that get off or seek help way before it progresses to that level of desperation.
Correct.
And that's why not all alcoholics look the same.
That's correct.
So it wouldn't be enough to just simply point at like, oh, you were never passed out during a period of time when you were drunk, or you weren't a mean drunk, as a way of determining whether an individual is or is not an alcoholic.
Correct.
Now, the process, once you have declared yourself to be an alcoholic, of starting the recovery process with AA involves coming to meetings, correct?
Correct.
And getting a sponsor,
Correct.
which is an older person who's had some history in the recovery program
Correct.
and can offer their perspective
And guidance.
and guidance. And is there a certain amount of time that a person has to be in recovery in order to qualify as a sponsor?
No.
Okay. And the steps that we talk about that occur in AA involve, among many other steps, 12 total steps. One of the steps is the process of making amends. Would you agree with me?
In step 1?
No. During the process of working through the
Eventually,
steps,
yes. That's step 9.
that's step 9.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I want to talk about the amends step just for a moment.
Okay.
That involves someone who is in the recovery process who goes to someone that he feels that he wronged, or he or she wronged, during the time that he was drinking, correct?
Step 9 is made a direct amend to people we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all.
And that usually involves a face-to-face sit down with the person that you wronged.
It can, yes.
Okay. And obviously, this is a fairly emotionally awkward, or it can be a socially awkward moment for someone the first time they do it. Isn't that fair?
Can be.
Oftentimes people write out their amends before they give the amends. Isn't that right?
Yeah, could be.
And one of the points of the amends step is for the alcoholic to confront the shame that he has about things that he did when he was drinking, which can be a driver, can it, to somebody maybe returning and getting off the path.
Could you elaborate, please, for me?
Yeah, well, let's put it this way. When a person gives amends to someone, they're doing it, yes, to say sorry to the person they've wronged, but they're also doing it for themselves, aren't they? As part of their recovery.
It's not sorry. And each individual has their own way of addressing their amends with the person that they're making the amends with. So I can't speak on that.
What happens if during the process of giving amends, the person they're talking to says, "You don't need to apologize to me"? Could it still be important for the alcoholic to finish making that amend, even though the person says, "I don't need an apology"?
Usually the individuals that are making amends have already been through step 5. And we do that in step 5.
Okay.
That's where we find our forgiveness.
Right.
So what the individual does with the amends that we're trying to make in step 9 is on them.
Right.
We're already free. We found our freedom already.
So the saying of amends doesn't depend on the person that you're talking to or the person you're making amends to needing an apology.
Well, an amends is becoming willing to do whatever it takes to make amends to that person. It's action.
And it's the willingness in the individual to do it.
And the action, yes.
And the action.
Correct.
And even if the person says, "Hey, I don't need an apology," it can still be important for the alcoholic to do that step 9 and make the full amends, list out to the person what he feels that he did that was wrong, and make a direct statement in that way.
That's an individual basis.
Yeah. But it could be that way, right? That's possible.
Could be, sure. Yeah.
You would agree with me that making amends can be difficult to do for some individuals?
Sure.
Particularly if the person isn't used to speaking about their emotions?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the term dry drunk?
Yes.
Could you explain that?
A drunk typically is someone who had a drinking problem, put down the drink, and then didn't enter the recovery community.
Even if they entered the recovery community and started essentially being sober and going to meetings, they can still be a dry drunk, right?
It's possible, sure. They are out there.
The idea is that you can be clear of alcohol, but that doesn't mean that you're necessarily recovered.
If the individual had underlying issues.
Yeah. Your behavior, which led you to drink, may still be in existence even after you stop drinking.
Could be.
And even particularly in the early stages of recovery, right? The first year and a half, that's when a lot of the emotions that were covered by the alcohol sort of start to come out, right?
Could.
Isn't that fairly typical?
Typical? I can't speak on that.
Okay. Well, frustration, anger, these are typical emotions that do occur in the early days of the recovery process that need to get dealt with as part of the AA program.
It can. It can be that way for some.
Now, Al-Anon is a program for people who have members of their family who are suffering from alcoholism, right?
It's a support group, correct.
Yeah. And it helps the person in the alcoholic's family recover, but it also gives tips as to how that person can support the alcoholic, right?
Correct.
In addition to all the other things that you mentioned a moment ago, you said that did you know that Michael had a sponsor in AA?
Yes.
And are you aware that he would also do commitments, speaking commitments?
Yes.
And are you aware that he went to a men's group?
Yes.
Okay. And of course, a commitment is a speech that you give to other AA groups about your own process of recovery, right?
Speech, no.
It's not a speech.
It's not a speech.
Okay. How would you describe it?
It's a heartfelt description of one's own experience with alcohol, one, and then the solution that came about in order to recover from that alcoholism.
And you do that verbally,
It's to
right?
promote hope and to show that there is a way out of your problems. Yes.
And that's done verbally in front of another
Verbally,
group?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Sober houses, other groups, recovery communities, halfway houses, institutions. We go to institutions as well. We go to jails. Yeah.
Now, it's not unusual for people who, during the process of recovery, start to change the group of people that they were hanging around with when they were still living their actively drinking life. That's not unusual, is it?
It's not unusual. It happens. It happens.
Well, let me do it this way. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to confuse you with the question, but let me break it down.
Thank you.
For example, a lot of times the social life of the alcoholic will largely revolve around alcohol prior to getting sober, right?
Correct.
And their friends that they had in that world that revolved around drinking would often be people who shared those habits with them. I'm not saying they had problems, but they would be people who knew them as drinking people.
Right. Correct.
And it's not unusual for people when they enter into sobriety and recovery to start changing their social environment.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And starting to do different activities.
Yes.
That's why you do sober softball.
Sure.
And that's why you do the sober bowling, right?
Yes.
And also sometimes it may be necessary to get a group of friends who are on the same path as you.
Absolutely. Like-minded individuals. Yes.
Right. And oftentimes the alcoholic will find it hard to go back to the group of friends that they had before when they were drinking because of those social associations that we just talked about. Right?
Yes. Yes. Correct.
Yeah. And that's why friends like you were so important to people like Michael and Christine at that
Michael
time.
was important to me. Yes.
Yeah. And you were important to him.
Yes. Thank you.
I have nothing further.
Redirect.
A few questions, please. Mr. Higgins, as far as the people who participate in the AA program, they do not have to self-identify as an alcoholic to participate in the program, do they?
No.
And as far as the 12 steps of the process, is it fair to say that the defendant, you spent a lot of time talking to the defendant about each and every one of those 12 steps?
Yes.
And she asked a lot of questions about each of those steps and how to go through those steps and work those steps.
Yes.
And when you were asked about step number 9, you mentioned that step number 9 is amends, but there's a prior step before that, step number 5, where you find forgiveness, and that's for the participant in the program, correct?
Correct.
And as far as step number 9 goes, you were asked some questions about that, but can you explain who step number 9 is focused on in the process? Is it on the participant or is it on somebody else?
Both.
Okay. And
But
when
it's
you,
primarily for the individual the participant wants to approach.
so the person that they wronged.
It's about making amends to that individual. Yes.
You were also asked on cross about the fact that some people find that there's kind of frustration and anger in those early stages of sobriety. Do you remember that line of
I
questioning?
remember that question. Yes.
Is it fair to say each journey's process through sobriety and through the steps of AA are different and personal to them?
Absolutely.
And as far as your observations of Michael Ricci when he was working these steps and going through the process, did you observe him with frustration and anger in his
Oh,
sobriety?
he was willing and enthusiastic about it.
Thank you. Nothing further.
What's up?
The witness may step down.
Thank you. Thank you.
testimony and the evidence issued to the court and the jury and that are now pending in the Commonwealth and defendant charged with the truth, full truth, nothing but the truth, so help God. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I inquire?
You may.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your last name for the record?
Yeah, my name is Greg Davis, Davis. I'm a detective with the Marshfield Police Department.
How long have you been employed as a police officer, sir?
20 years. 20.
And have you always been employed by the Marshfield Police Department?
I worked part-time for Duxbury Police prior to that for 2.5 years.
And what is your current position or title?
I'm a detective.
How long have you been a detective, sir?
Approximately 12 years now.
And prior to becoming a detective, what was your position?
I was a patrolman.
And what are some of your duties and responsibilities as a detective?
We respond to general crimes. We do sexual assault investigations. We do drug investigations. We do unattended death investigations as well.
And back in 2021, were you a detective at Marshfield Police Department?
I was.
How many death investigations have you been involved in, sir?
Numerous death investigations.
Drawing your attention, sir, to January 28th, 2021, were you working that late afternoon?
I worked that day, but I was not working at the time this call came in.
What shift had you been working that day?
That day I worked the 8 to 4 shift.
And at approximately 5 p.m., were you called into work?
I was.
By whom?
Lieutenant Marcolini.
For what?
He said that there was a stabbing on Moraine Street, and he said that state police were responding, and he'd like me to meet them there to assist.
And how large a department is Marshfield, sir, just to give us an idea?
Approximately 45 employees right now.
And is that unusual for you to be off work but get called in following a situation like this?
No, not at all.
And after you got that call at approximately 5 p.m., where did you go?
I went to 679 Moraine Street.
And can you describe that location, sir?
Yeah, it's a single family residence located on Moraine Street amongst other single family residences.
Just showing you what was previously marked as Exhibit 35, sir. Is this the location that you responded to?
Yes, it is.
And when you arrived, what was your role? What did you do?
At that point, I arrived. There were 3 other officers from Marshfield at the scene: Lieutenant Sullivan, Sergeant Tingley, and Officer Hunt.
And had the scene been secured at that point?
Yes, it was. I just arrived and stayed outside with those 3 officers.
Was it light or dark out when you arrived?
It was dark out.
And the weather that night?
It was a snowy night. There had been snow. It was icy.
When you arrived, were you briefed about the actual 911 call that had come in?
Yes.
And what information were you made aware of, sir?
Objection, Your Honor.
Generally, what were you there for, sir?
I was there to respond to take over and assist with the state police that were responding to the scene as well.
And were you provided information as to the identity of the people involved in the Moraine Street address?
I was, yes.
And what names were provided?
Michael Ricci and Christine Ricci.
And when you arrived, sir, did you go inside the home or did you stay outside the home at that juncture?
Yeah, at that juncture, I stayed outside.
And were you made aware of where Michael Ricci was at that time?
Yes, he'd been transported to South Shore Hospital.
And where was Christine Ricci?
At that point, she was at the Marshfield Police Station.
And were you made aware of any other relatives that had been in the home that had since left the home?
Yes.
And who was that?
Sophia Ricci.
And where was she?
She was also at the Marshfield Police.
And what did you do next after you were initially briefed at the home?
I went back to the Marshfield Police Station.
And once there, sir, did you coordinate efforts with the state police at that point in the investigation?
I did, yes.
And ultimately, were you named the case officer for Marshfield Police Department?
I was, yes.
And in investigating deaths in your town, do you often collaborate with another law enforcement agency, sir?
Yes, I do.
And who is that?
That'd be the state police assigned to the district attorney's office.
And as the case officer for the Marshfield Police Department, were you in fact paired up with a state trooper in this matter to conduct follow-up investigation?
I was, yes.
Who is that, sir?
Trooper Corey Mello.
And he's no longer, he has a different position now, as far as you know, correct?
Yes,
And did you work closely with Trooper Mello in this investigation, sir?
I did, yes.
Can you tell us what a neighborhood canvass is?
A neighborhood canvass is something that detectives do usually when there's any type of a crime. They'll go door to door to neighbors' houses just to knock and talk to the residents to see if anything was seen or heard suspicious.
And at times, if there's video footage from homes, like Ring doorbells, that might be collected at that time. Is that right?
Any kind of video footage, definitely.
And similar to other situations, was a neighborhood canvass conducted in this case?
Yes, it was.
Anything notable discovered?
No.
And at some point soon after you became involved, was a search warrant obtained for the Marine Street residence?
Yes, it was.
And at some point, sir, did you come to learn that crime scene services from the state police had gone to the Marine Street residence?
Yes, they did.
And what was their purpose in them going to that location?
To gather scientific evidence and to seize any evidence at the scene.
And at some point, did you go back to the Marine Street residence?
I did, yes.
And was it that night?
Yes, it was.
And did you walk around the home and make observations?
I did.
May I approach the witness, please?
You may.
May we approach?
You may.
So I'm just going to approach with what was previously marked as Exhibit 44 and ask if you recognize what that is in the photograph.
Yes, I do.
And what is in Exhibit 44 as best as you recollect, sir?
I believe that's the master bedroom.
And this is fair to say it's one side of the master bedroom, correct?
Correct.
May I approach again? Just going to ask you to take a look at another photograph, sir, and tell me if you recognize what that is.
I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
Also the master bedroom.
And is that the opposing side on the other side of the bed?
Yes.
And is that a fair and accurate depiction of how it appeared that night?
Yes, it is.
Or the actual search warrant execution, but after the house was secured?
Yes, as far as I'm aware, yes.
I'd ask that this be marked as a miss.
Objection.
I would renew my objection with regard to the tidiness stuff we spoke about.
I note that objection. The photo of the other side of the master bedroom will be marked in a minute as Exhibit 45. Is that right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
With the court's permission, may I just publish it?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, just showing you what was previously marked as Exhibit 45. This is the other side of the bedroom, is that right?
Yes.
And in essence, we're looking at the same bed here, just different angles, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And as part of your role as case officer, sir, are you aware that certain items were taken from 679 Marine Street into evidence?
Yes.
And specifically, what was taken as far as you know from that actual location?
Objection, Your Honor.
Basis?
We need to approach. I'm sorry. I hate to do this.
Sir, in the course of the investigation, were certain items taken from the scene that were deemed to have some evidentiary value?
Yes, they were.
And specifically, were those knives that were located on the scene?
Yes, they were.
And when crime scene services arrived, is that were the knives ultimately given to crime scene services to process and attempt to extract evidence from them?
Yes.
And during your observations of the living area and where the crime allegedly occurred, did you make any observations of any sign of furniture disturbed or turned upside down or anything out of order?
No, I did not.
What, if any, signs of an apparent struggle were observed?
I did not note any signs.
And what, if any, interviews were conducted of family members, namely children, that evening?
Sophia was interviewed at the Marshfield Police Station, I believe by Trooper Mello, but I'm not positive. And I know that the other two sons were also interviewed at the hospital by troopers. I believe it was Trooper McDonald.
And in terms of the sons, are you referring to Angel Ricci and Michael Ricci Jr.?
Yes, correct.
And following the interviews of Angel, the brief interviews of Angel and Michael Jr. At the hospital by Trooper McDonald, excuse me, are you aware as the case officer that they consented to provide their phones?
Yes.
And at some point that evening, sir, as a case officer, did you come to learn that Michael Ricci was declared deceased?
I did, yes.
And was that information provided by a particular doctor that you know the name of?
Dr. Toyer, I believe his name was.
And at approximately what time was he declared deceased?
Approximately 5:30 p.m.
And did you come to learn of or observe the injuries that Mr. Ricci suffered from?
I did, yes.
Could you describe the injuries that you observed?
Objection, Your Honor. We have this through multiple sources already.
Sustained.
And are you aware if law enforcement officers took photographs at the hospital of Mr. Ricci?
Yes.
And was that a crime scene services trooper that took the photographs?
Yes, it was.
And what, if anything, was taken into evidence from Michael Ricci's person?
I believe it was clothing that was taken as evidence.
And did that include the 2 shirts that had been torn off him to perform life-saving measures?
Yes,
And is it fair to say those were sent to the lab?
correct, yes.
And in terms of Christine Ricci, were certain items taken off her person and sent to the lab?
Yes,
And what items were taken from her?
clothing as well.
And did you have an opportunity to observe the defendant at the police station that evening?
Yes, I did.
What, if any, significant injuries did you observe on her person?
I didn't see significant injuries. I did see scratches.
And do you know if the items of her clothing were sent to the lab and subsequently tested?
Yes, they were.
And were other individuals as part of the investigation interviewed, sir?
Yes,
And was that primarily friends and family members of both Christine Ricci and Michael Ricci?
yes, as well as coworkers.
And coworkers, thank you. And in terms of search warrants, were any search warrants done in this case, sir?
Yes, there were.
And what was that for?
It was further evidence. I believe it was for cell phones.
And the house, obviously, as we
House,
discussed
yes.
earlier, correct?
Correct.
And was any video surveillance obtained to establish any kind of timeline in this case?
Yes, there was one piece of surveillance that was taken.
And where was that taken from?
That was the Dunkin' Donuts on Ocean Street in Marshfield.
And were you able to go to Dunkin' Donuts and obtain that footage from the day in question?
Yes, I was.
And what was the purpose of obtaining that, sir?
Just to establish a timeline.
And it was put onto a disc, is that correct?
Yes, it was.
I'd ask that this be marked as the next exhibit and then shown to the jury, which we've downloaded onto the computer.
Is there any objection to that?
No, Your Honor.
It'll be marked and admitted as Exhibit 46. Thank you.
And it's a short video, a couple minutes long, Your Honor, with your permission to replay it.
May.
And for the record, it's going to start at 2:19 p.m., 2:19 and 10 seconds in the afternoon. Were you able to identify who's shown in that upper right-hand corner close-up?
Yes,
And who is that?
Michael Ricci.
And were you able to establish that that's the vehicle that he drives or drove?
Yes.
And while this is playing, sir, which Dunkin' Donuts was this?
It was the Dunkin' Donuts located on Ocean Street in Marshfield.
Where is that in relationship to the Marine Street, 679 Marine Street?
I'd say probably within a mile and a half tops. There's 2 in Marshfield. There's another one on Plain Street, but that's much further away.
And just for the record, Mr. Ricci is pulling up to the drive-thru and obtaining his food, beginning at 2:19 and ending at approximately 2:21. Is that accurate? 2:22, sir?
Yes, correct.
One moment, please. Nothing further at this time. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. One last question. Sir, as part of your investigation, did you also obtain text messages from a Janine Bouchard?
Yes, I did.
And who were those text messages between?
Janine and Christine Ricci.
And there was a series of multiple text messages from 3 dates that you were able to successfully obtain, correct?
Yes, correct.
Nothing further.
Cross-exam.
You mentioned during direct examination that none of the furniture that you saw was disturbed.
That's correct, sir. Yes.
You don't know the way that the furniture normally looks inside the 679 Moraine Street house, correct?
Correct. I've never been there before this day.
And there had already been a number of police officers and first responders in the home between the time that authorities first arrived or were responding to this call and the time you got there.
Yes, that's true.
Okay. Is what you meant that you, just as far as you know, no furniture was disturbed or moved?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Nothing further.
Any redirect?
No, thank you.
The witness may step down.
Thank you.
May we briefly approach him?
You may.
Thank you.
Stop right there, sir. Face the clerk, please information.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony and the evidence which you report from the jury in the matter now hearing the calm and intended to bar with the truth, whole and done with the truth of God? Thank you.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
In a loud, clear voice, could you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your last name?
Yes, my name is Michael Ricci Jr. Its last name is R-I-C-C-I.
Thank you, sir. And what is your date of birth?
11/04/1999.
And how old are you?
24.
What is your current address?
100 Reedville Street in Hyde Park.
And who do you live there with?
My girlfriend.
And do you work, sir?
I do.
What do you do?
I work for a boiler company. It's called George T. Wilkinson.
George T. Wilkerson?
Wilkinson, yeah.
Wilkinson?
Wilkinson, yeah.
And you said a boiler company?
Yeah,
And what do you do for them?
I'm a parts driver.
And prior to your current employment, what did you do, sir?
I was working for a firearm company called Prestige Alarm.
Did you graduate high school?
I did.
From which high school?
Marshwood High School.
Where did you grow up, sir?
In Marshfield.
Your entire life?
Since I want to say 2007.
And what specific address did you live at?
679 Moraine Street.
And when you lived there, sir, who did you live there with?
My brother and sister, Angel and Sophia, and my parents,
And your parents' names?
Christine and Michael Sr.
And you obviously were named after him.
Yes.
And the ages of your siblings, sir?
I believe my brother is 27 and my sister is 18.
And do you all share the same mother?
I believe so, yes. Yeah, we do.
And do you all three share the same father?
No, me and my sister share the same father.
And your father is Michael Ricci Sr.
Yes.
And then was Angel at some point early on adopted by your father?
Yes.
And what did he call your father? Did he call him dad?
Dad, yeah.
And that was a legal adoption, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And your mother, Christine Ricci, do you see her in the courtroom today, sir?
I do.
Can you please point to her and tell me something she's wearing?
Of course, she's in the blue blazer right over there.
Thank you. May the record reflect the identification made by the witness of the defendant?
Any objection? The record will reflect that the witness has identified Christine Ricci.
And your father, sir, his full name is Michael Ricci, Sr.
Yes.
I'm just going to show you a photograph, sir, and tell me if you recognize the photograph.
Yep, I do.
Is that your dad?
That's my dad.
What did your father do for work, sir, when you were growing up?
He was a Boston fireman.
Do you know how long he was a Boston firefighter, sir?
I think about 22, 23 years.
Did you know what firehouse he was working at when he passed away?
I do. I believe it was the firehouse on Atherton Street in Jamaica Plain. I think it was ladder 42, I think.
And besides being a firefighter, were you aware of any other jobs your father did?
Yes.
What else did he do?
He worked for a sprinkler company.
And are you aware of your father's military background at all?
I am, yeah.
And what branch was he in?
The Army.
And are you aware of when your father stopped working at the sprinkler company?
I can't pinpoint the year for certain, but maybe around 2018, 2019, if I had to guess.
And do you know who he worked with at the sprinkler company?
I do.
Was it somebody you knew well?
I did.
Who was that?
Mark McDonald.
And who was Mark McDonald?
He was our uncle and my dad's best friend for as long as we can remember, over 40 years.
And did he play kind of a special role in your family?
Yes.
Could you describe that?
Like I said, he was our uncle and he was the closest person to us that I could think of. And like I said, he's my dad's best friend and we always saw him around my dad and it was always a great time to be around him.
Was he also asked to be Sophia's godfather?
Yes, he was.
And can you describe your relationship with your father right before he passed, sir?
Like the moment before or like how?
The year leading up to his death. Did you see him?
I did see him, yes.
And could you describe your relationship?
It was distant, but it was strong. There was no ill will, no grudges towards each other. I mean, it was always an I love you anytime we try to talk on the phone or text or in person. So there's no strain between the two of us.
What was your childhood like in the Ricci household at 679 Marine Street, sir, when you were a young boy?
I thought it was a normal household and didn't seem like I was going through hard adversities. And as a kid, just normal, go to school, get fed, have some hobbies, and spend time with the family. And I seemed pretty normal to me.
And did you guys have like family dinners together at times?
Yep. We would always watch TV shows or watch a sports game together in the dining room or the living room and eat dinner together.
And who shared kind of the household responsibilities? Was it on one person or was it distributed?
It was somewhat distributed between the two parents, but I'd say maybe one took on a little bit more than the other, but it was definitely split between the two parents.
And who would you say took on more?
Maybe a little bit more my dad.
Was that always how it was, or did it become that way over time?
I think it maybe just become that way over time, just because I think it was more of the time when we were living in the house longer than 5 years. So we started getting comfortable with how the neighborhood was and how our house was. So we got, more responsibility to take care of. So.
And was your family close, would you say?
I would say so, yes.
And drawing your attention to the fall of 2018, sir, what, if any, changes did you observe in your home?
There's a lot of silence, what felt like tension and an overall concern of where people were. So,
What do you mean concern over where people were?
I noticed that my dad was not home. He was not home for longer than usually his schedule would be as a firefighter.
So it was noticeably different.
Yes.
And then did it change from a house filled with silence and tension to something different?
Yes.
Could you describe that?
It was hostile, very loud, and I guess even more tension than it was before.
Did you become aware of something your father had done?
Yes.
And was this the fall of 2018, roughly?
I believe so, yes.
And how did you become aware of what had happened?
I was with my sister upstairs. I think it was in her room, and we got called by either the defendant or my dad to come downstairs because they wanted to talk to us. And we were told that my dad is an alcoholic.
Was this a surprise to you?
Yes.
And was that the nature basically of that initial conversation?
Yes.
And was anything else said about your dad being an alcoholic at that time?
Yeah, there was additional information, but it wasn't, I was told privately about it.
Well, I'll get to that. There was a subsequent conversation with you and your father, is that right?
Yes,
Is that when you found out about an affair?
I did, yeah.
Okay. And where were you when that conversation took place, sir?
Me and my father were both in his car.
And how did that come to be?
We were driving around, I think, the parking lot of Star Market, Shaw's. He said, there's also something I want to tell you, that I saw another woman.
And when was that conversation in relationship to the conversation about him being an alcoholic?
I believe it was the same day, maybe 30 minutes to an hour after the initial sit down that we had.
And what was his demeanor when he was talking to you in the car that day?
I could notice that it was a lot of guilt coming out of his voice.
And how long did that conversation with your father in the car or in the parking lot of Shaw's or Star Market last, sir?
It was pretty brief. It wasn't longer than maybe 15 minutes.
And then where did you and your father go thereafter?
We went immediately back to the house.
And when the two of you arrived back at the house, was there any further conversation that day that you recall occurring about the affair?
Not that I can recall, no.
Okay. And following that particular day, when you learned about both those things about your father, did you see changes in your father thereafter?
I did.
Can you describe those changes, sir?
He was a lot more quiet. Not a lot of one-on-one time between the kids and our dad. He was there, but he wasn't present, if that makes any sense.
And what, if any, changes did you see in your mother?
There was a lot of high vocals coming from her, a lot of screaming. The house felt very tense. And it was very uncomfortable.
And in terms of a lot of screaming by your mother, could you tell us a little bit more about how often you would hear her screaming?
If it wasn't every night, it was every other 2 nights. It was very often.
And what would she be screaming about?
the woman my dad had a relationship with.
And what kinds of things do you recall her screaming about in particular?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow him to answer it if he remembers.
It was, do you love her? Were you gonna start a family with her? And how they had sexual intercourse together.
And would you hear your father respond in any way?
Most of the time, yes, but it wasn't too loud to hear. It was on a high vocal.
It was not a high vocal?
No.
Okay. Did you hear him screaming as much as your mom?
Not really, no.
And after you learned of the things you just previously described about your father, I'm sorry, strike that. At some point, sir, did you make a decision to move out of your home?
I did.
When was that?
June 6th of 2019.
Your Honor, may we approach? Yes, thank you.
I think that's Christine crying, and I think they should take a break. Although she looks okay now. So when Angel, was it Angel or Sophia on the stand? Little Miss, you'll have to remind me. When one of them was on the stand, she mouthed, "I love you."
Actually, jurors, we're going to go into a new line of inquiry here, and I didn't realize how close we were to the 4 o'clock hour, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to start that right now. So I'm going to send you on your way for the day with about 5 minutes left in your day. Because I need you to be vigilant to your instructions as jurors, your oath as jurors. Don't speak to anyone about this case. Don't do any research about this case, and continue to have open minds as you listen to the evidence in this case. We'll see you back ready to work at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Good, all right, so the jury, just place your notebooks in the chair, exit this way.
Thank you.
Everyone may be seated. Consistent with what we said at the side of the bar, the conversations or the limitations will be expressed through Attorney Bradel.
Absolutely.
All right. And so, medical examiner, Mr. Ricci, anyone else tomorrow?
No.
All right. I want to raise some issues with regard to the jury instructions. I mentioned this the other day. I've had an opportunity to look at some of the law. I'm going to continue to look at the law, but I want to hear from the parties specifically as to 2 issues, which will come as no surprise to you. First is the issue with regard to the self-defense instruction and the propriety of the self-defense instruction, in particular in connection with the homicide charge. And I want you to be focused on the Chambers case and progeny from the Chambers case. And with regard to the SJC's, I'll call it announcement in that case, that in the context of a murder case, This is at the very end of page 529. There, the court is talking about first criminal defendants who are found to have been the first aggressor and their loss of right to claim self-defense unless they withdraw in good faith from the conflict and announce their intention to retire, citing McGuire and Harris and a few other cases. Go on to talk about, in the context of homicide, the potential, I'm reading from the case, the potential overbreadth of our earlier definitions of first aggressor, and clarified that, and I'm reading from the case, in the context of homicide, a defendant may lose the right to claim self-defense only if he, she, was the first to use or threaten deadly force. And then it cites to the then somewhat recent new model jury instructions on homicide 28 and 29 at note 68. There are maybe 25, 30 cases that cite to this case since then. I'm in the process of reading them, and I need you to be engaged in this process, in particular with regard to your arguments about taking the evidence in the light most favorable to the defendant, what evidence there is that the deceased was the first aggressor, if first aggressor is defined as the person that threatens or uses deadly force. To be more specific, as I understand the evidence in this case right now, and that's only where it stands right now, the evidence of what happened in that kitchen on that day is described through the words of the defendant herself as reported to the police the day that they're in the kitchen. As it stands right now, there is no other evidence of what happened in the kitchen other than some testimony with regard to banging, loud yelling. But I need you to be focused on that particular definition of first aggressor in the context of a homicide, as opposed to self-defense in the context of the ABDW charge, which is a different thing. It's something that the SJC has tried to explain, although however imperfectly as the facts of those cases have dictated. So I'm going to be expecting you to make your respective arguments on that so that I can address that. Equally, although I would have admittedly done less work on this, the Commonwealth is asking for, the defense is objecting to the theory of cruel and atrocious. The evidence isn't in yet. That's part of the reason why I asked for the medical examiner's report. I got it this morning. I'll take a good look at it tonight. But the burden is going to be on the Commonwealth on the present state of the affairs. It seems to me that there's quite limited information that supports that charge. Again, we have more to come, but I want the Commonwealth to be focused on the law that supports that instruction on the case law that is out there. What best supports it, and on the other side, what doesn't. Separate and apart from that, the idea of self-defense in the context of ABDW is a separate instance, separate analysis with regard to the evidence, but I want both of your positions with regard to the propriety of the self-defense instruction on the ABDW charge. So those are certain things that are on my mind And I want it to be on your mind so that when we get to the charge conference, you can best articulate your arguments to your respective sides. Any questions about that?
In terms of that discussion, Your Honor, in terms of timing, when we're going to have this kind of follow-up, can we just get a little bit just information from the court as you see tomorrow going?
It sort of depends.
I know. So just my best guesstimate is I think probably we would have under an hour left on our side with Michael Jr. I don't know how long defense will go, let's say an hour or so, I don't know. And then we have, the medical examiner is not lengthy in time. I would surmise about 30 minutes. So with that said, if that is our best guesstimate, I guess we're all just trying to figure out if we are going to close tomorrow, if we're going to do the charge conference thereafter. Not closing tomorrow.
No.
Okay.
These issues need to be, these are obviously, I don't need to tell you, critical issues. Obviously, you want the opportunity to argue those issues, but I want the opportunity to try to get it right on thoughtful consideration of those arguments. These are important issues to the determination of what work we're going to ask the jury to do as fact finders. So I don't have any intention of running this into closings without you having the opportunity to thoroughly argue your positions with regard to the self-defense instruction and with regard to the cruel and atrocious instruction.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
We'll start back tomorrow morning. Anything anybody needs before then?
Nothing from the Commonwealth. Thank you.
No, Your Honor.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
All right.
Okay. So let's just see. Can I read this on here? No. Okay. So assault A, B, D, W is assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon. Defendant is charged with having committed an intentional assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon. In order to prove the defendant guilty of this offense, the Commonwealth must prove the following three things beyond a reasonable doubt. First, that the defendant touched the person, proven with beyond a reasonable doubt. Second, that the defendant intended to touch, so that's where he fell into the knife is coming in. That the touching was done, third, the touching was done with a dangerous weapon. They've proved that. That they intended to, that the defendant consciously and deliberately intended the touching to occur, and that the touching was not merely accidental or negligent. I don't think they've proven that. I don't think they can say at this point, obviously defense has not presented their case, state has not done rebuttal, but to prove the second element, they must prove the defendant intended to touch the victim in the sense that the defendant consciously and deliberately intended it to occur. It was not accidental or negligent. So if the Commonwealth can really pull it all together that she wanted to hurt him, she intended to hurt him, then they might get that. What worries me with what the judge just said is that the defense, in order for it to be self-defense, he had to have been threatening her life, like in that moment. And I'm a little bit the second way in which a person may be guilty of an assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon. Instead of intentional conduct, it involves a reckless touching that results in bodily injury. I think that is. So these would be lessers then. This is a lesser. To prove the first element, the Commonwealth must prove that the bodily injury was sufficiently serious. The victim is dead. To prove the second element, the Commonwealth must prove that a dangerous weapon caused the bodily injury. He's dead by knife. To be used in a dangerous fashion, it reasonably appears to be capable of causing serious injury or death. If you pull out a knife. To prove the third element, the Commonwealth must prove the defendant acted recklessly. It's not enough for the Commonwealth to prove that the defendant acted negligently. That is, acted in a way that a reasonably careful person would not. So, the defendant acted recklessly if she knew or should have known that such actions were very likely to cause substantial harm to someone, but she ran the risk and went ahead anyway. But it is not necessary that she intended to injure or strike the alleged victim, or that she foresaw the harm that resulted. If the defendant actually realized in advance that her conduct was very likely to cause substantial harm and decided to run that risk, such conduct would, of course, be reckless. But even if she was not conscious of the serious danger that was inherent in such conduct, it is still reckless conduct if a reasonable person, under the circumstances as they were known to the defendant, would have recognized that such actions were so dangerous that it was very likely they would result in substantial injury. The way that these are reading, even though I feel for her, this is not sounding good. That's a jury instructions, not the law. But the law, these would be written according to the law, right? So this is, she said, when you're looking at the jury instructions, please pay attention to the case law. This would be what they're working from. This would be their template. And then what she's mentioned is going to be used to adjust the template. But this is still the template. So the prosecution would have had to have found potential elements of these to charge, right? As far as I can understand. I think what she was saying concerns her is adding self-defense to this. If you take the reasonable person argument, which I hate, because what is a reasonable person? I need it defined. Like, there are things that I think are absolutely reasonable that someone else might not, and vice versa. Some people think it's absolutely reasonable to continue to drive the same speed in the rain, even like if they're sticking to the speed limit, they think it's reasonable, even if it's raining. I think it's absolutely unreasonable because you could foresee that increasing your speed on wet roads is recipe for disaster. They're still within the law. Is that a reasonable person argument? I think the problem is that a knife, a reasonable person could say that a knife is going to cause harm. So unless he was causing immediate threat to her. Okay, wait, they actually have a part on knives. This. Not all knives are dangerous weapons as a matter of law. If in doubt, the court should consider utilizing instruction B for the jury to decide whether the knife was used in a dangerous or potentially dangerous fashion. By statute, any stiletto, by the way, the stiletto killer is quite an interesting story. Dagger or a device or case which enables a knife with the locking blade to be drawn at a locked position. This is so confusing. And I'm your sorry. It's not the length of the knife, it's how you use it. That's what they're saying. To sum it up. Victim injured while escaping? We don't know. I was so hoping they had self-defense here, but that's the end of it. I don't know. From these instructions, I should have paid attention to which case law the judge said they must pay attention to, because then I could look it up myself. And then we could always ask ChatGPT to explain it like we're 5. But from what I'm understanding, but the people is her. She did it to herself most of the time, not to other people. So for the people listening, not watching, Lil Miss says, in my opinion, seeing where the incident happened, it was open all around her and she could have run rather than used a knife. Plus, she had a history of pulling knives on people. And this is where I think the problem is going to come in for her. Everything I've heard so far does not point to her life being an immediate threat. So like with Ashley Benefield, I do feel like it was reasonable for her to believe her life was being threatened. I don't see that here. I think that he had potentially been mistreating her, of course. I mean, he had an affair. But I didn't hear anything to me that stood out as threatening. I don't know. I might need a refresher on the children's testimony. There was definitely a lot of fighting in the house, and he definitely had alcohol problems, and it was going really badly until he chose sobriety and then ended the affair. But I'm putting those instructions together as the case stands right now, which is only halfway. I can see how she would come out guilty. I don't either. I've heard a lot of yelling on his end and physical abuse on her. I think on her end against him. This is the thing though, right? Like, we don't know if, because we haven't heard her side yet, essentially, we don't know if he was just more subtle about it. Like, he worked in the military. I mean, he was in the military. He worked for the fire department. Was he choosing concealed spots? Like, we don't know yet. I agree that she may have to take the stand. And I personally don't like it when a defendant is forced into that in order for a jury to believe them. Because you have the right not to. Also, the coloring of my face looks alarming in this light. Also, I'm scratching my eyes and my nose because hiccups, because I'm allergic to catnip and the cats have been begging for it. So I've been taking the hit, and now my face, my nose, my eyes all itchy. Oh, let's see if I can see something. Self-defense. Mass. Law. Okay, well, they call it complex self-defense law. Basic knowledge. Wait, I'm not showing my screen. I think it's a lot easier for people to read if you can see it at the same time. Oh, that writing is teeny tiny. Nice. They're not letting me, it's not letting me zoom. Basic knowledge. Massachusetts recognizes individuals' legal right to defend themselves from harm or danger, ensure they have access to protection when faced with imminent danger. When faced with imminent danger or threats of imminent danger. The claim must contain certain elements. Defense claims require reasonable belief that they were under immediate danger from harm or assault. Self-defense should use proportionate force against perceived threats. So I think they weren't. I don't remember how many stab wounds there were. I only remember one. Claimants claiming self-defense cannot act in ways which lead to or escalate situations. Legal requirements. Courts take several factors into consideration when assessing self-defense claims as valid, such as individuals facing threats of various natures. That is so vague. Do not resort to force. Explore all options instead. Oh, but they do take the history into account. All actions and behaviors leading up to and during an incident must be assessed, as well as those leading up to it and during it. But it's imminent danger. It's imminent. When it comes to self-defense, it's essential that one remembers they have the right only to defend themselves and not others. Intervening when another is being attacked may not fall under self-defense laws unless both you and the individual are at risk. That is, whew, that's weird for me. That's so weird. Proportionate force. But you see, like, if she grabbed the knife and... So here's where it gets tricky for me. She had previously done YouTube. This is an ice cream stick. Don't get hectic. She had previously done this vibe, right? So she grabs it and is going to, and he runs toward her to stop her. Drank a lot, never stabbed anyone. Trish, it's tricky because he was the drinker, not her. I drank a lot, didn't stab anyone, but I definitely made choices I wouldn't have made now. It's possible they'll have witnesses to show she was abused by him, in which case she won't need to take the stand. But if she wants the jury to believe she was in danger, how else can she prove it? Had to have had his hands on her to use the knife. this is such a tricky one. I really like, just sidebar, I don't like that you can't defend others. I don't like that. That's weird. So if Angel was in the kitchen and he was threatening Angel and was going to do something to Angel and she took the steps, then that wouldn't count. Duty to retreat. The emphasis should be on finding ways to flee. There may be exceptions. Although Massachusetts generally adheres to a duty to retreat policy, there may be certain situations in which individuals do not need to retreat before resorting to force in self-defense. One such instance occurs when individuals are within their home or dwelling place, castle doctrine, becomes necessary to defend oneself without first trying to flee. So, okay, so this always confuses me when you live in the same house. Like, how does that work then? These factors taken into account include the severity of the threat posed by the attacker, alternative means available to avoid using deadly force, and whether reasonable belief that such measures were required to protect oneself and or others from imminent danger. Well, defense is going to have to pull a rabbit out of a hat here. Because as it currently stands, I don't see how I don't feel like she was malicious. I think she was struggling with the whole affair thing, but she'd invested so much into his sobriety and this like new life together. I don't see her destroying that on purpose. But the way that the law is and what we've read, if I were a juror and those were my instructions, I would have to say guilty. Exactly. Who should retreat? The home belongs to you both, but I think the one in the danger should retreat and run to get help. I think she was retaliating. If she was retaliating, then was he coming at her? Do you mean retaliating for the emotional, the drinking, that sort of thing? Like a history of retaliating? In the heart, up too high and in the back. In the heart is up too high and in the back. So she must have been, how tall was he? You know what? This is kind of crazy. We have reached the second last day of defense. Defense's last day is tomorrow. We've reached this point and we haven't seen anything to explain that. The DNA people was like, did the DNA match him? Yes. Then the forensics is like, did this match? Yes. Did this match? Yes. 6'3". So he was taller than Vaughn, and I think she is taller than me. So it would have to be. And in the back. In the back. State. So then, yeah, sadly, I think here's 6'2" or 6'3", she was 5'3". So Vaughn is, he's got earphones in. I'm going to have to change 1 point. forgotten how tall he is. He's 6'2". I'm 5'1". So I feel like I want to just like test it out. Should we put on some Fleischer while I do my own test here? Where'd you go? Oh, here. Okay, BRB. I'm going to science.
All right, page 1 and 2, Judge.
Avendano,
Avendano.
come up. Step all the way up for me.
Mr. Avendano, you're charged 2 counts of assault of a family member. You're facing up to a year in jail and or a $4,000 fine.
Oh, yes, sir.
So how many times has Mr. Avendano sticked out on us? You know,
Judge, this is the second PR bond. So
Want me to explain?
no,
Okay.
nope. What are you doing like Mr. Avendano?
Marine. I've been working in the city of Houston undercover. So that's why I skipped out on, no, I didn't really, but my phone was lost and I couldn't contact the court, but it wasn't intentional. So a friend,
All I'm waiting for is you've been abducted by aliens. That's all I'm waiting for.
oh, I understand, sir. Close enough.
Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna appoint your lawyer, and we're gonna figure out what we're doing here.
Okay, sir.
Take a seat in the jury box.
Thank you.
all right, Judge, next is page 10. Henderson, Demarion.
Good morning, Mr. Henderson. Sir, you were charged with unlawful conduct. You're facing up to a year in jail and or a $4,000 fine. We're going to do probable cause. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can will be used against you. You have the right to have an attorney present in our 4-1 to be appointed to you, sir.
Judge, on July 22nd, 2024, officers with crime suppression observed a vehicle traveling without a rear license plate at night and conducted a traffic stop. Driver was ID'd by his name and date of birth, and he had a felony warrant out of the 263rd. Upon contact, officers could smell a strong odor of marijuana. Search discovered 8.4 grams of marijuana and a Glock, which came back as stolen out of Louisiana.
All right. Mr. Henderson, I'm gonna find that there's probable cause to go forward with the case. So he has an open aggravated assault.
Out of the 263rd, yes, Judge.
Mr. Henderson, how old are you?
19.
What do you do for a living?
I work for a moving company.
Did you graduate from high school?
No, sir, I'm going back to school for my GED as we speak.
You and I are gonna start doing that together.
Yes, sir.
The first thing that I'm gonna do with you is you will sign with me today an affidavit.
Yes, sir.
This is a promise that you're gonna make to me,
Yes, sir.
that you not have any weapons whatsoever.
Yes, sir.
I don't care what's going on in your life. I don't care what you're going, where you're going. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care who you hang out with. If I find that you have a weapon, you'll be facing an additional 6 months in jail on a contempt charge. Every single time you have a weapon, up to 6 months in jail and or $500 fine. Do you understand? I will tell you now. 31 days from today, you will get tested for dope. If I find that you continue to smoke weed, likewise, I'm going to put you in jail. You will be earning your GED from a pair of black bars behind you. I will appoint you a lawyer today. And in 2 weeks, I want you back here to show me what you have done to get your GED and get those classes to start rolling. If you've done nothing, you and I are not going to be dancing. Who do you have with you in your life now?
Right now, I stay with my girlfriend.
Do you have a mother?
Yes, sir.
Do you have a father?
No, well, I do have a father, but he's not in my life.
Where is your father?
As of now, I'm not aware.
It's apparent to me that you have no structure in your life. And you have no one that's coming down to bringing down the rain of showing you what is right and showing you what is wrong. I am that person now that is going to do that for you. And if you act like a little child, I will put you up on my knee and I will spank you like a little child. But I'm going to do it with a ton of jail time. Do you understand, Mr. Henderson? No more acting like a fool while you're out there in the free world. Because I will take it away from you in a heartbeat. I will do everything in my power to protect every single person in Harris County.
Yes, sir.
Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
2 weeks, you will be back there. Show me what you've done. Number one.
Yes, sir.
Number two, do you have a Texas driver license?
No, sir.
Then you will not be driving as well. In this affidavit, you will be promising me that you're not going to drive.
Yes, sir.
The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put an ankle monitor on you and I'm giving you a curfew. I don't want you out in the middle of the night because I can't trust you. You go out past 9 p.m. You and I will not be dancing.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to keep you so close to me that you're going to think that we're not. This is an affidavit.
Yes, sir.
No weapons. No driving. Are you clear?
Yes, sir.
All right. Can you reach out to the public defense office, please?
Yes.
Tracy, waive the fees, GPS monitor, no driving, 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. And then we'll bring him back in 2 weeks. And then we will also test him 31 days from today to see if he's gotten dope in.
All right, Judge, the last arraignment we have is page 21, 22, right? Come on up. Something's wrong with the audio. They can't hear you.
She was just telling me to talk to a lawyer. She was
Yes. I'm good, how are you? All right, is discovery complete? Offers made? Offers made? Yeah, that's fine. 829, waive the parents pending litigation. All right, got it. You're welcome. Hey, what's up? Oh, yes, the traffic is this. Thank you. zealously.
All right.
Judge, this one was taken into custody last time. Just a heads up.
Okay. I don't know, I think that either the cleaning crew or something are doing something with the mic. What is his name? What is your name, sir?
Page 21 and 22, last name Wright.
And yet another case. Another.
New program now.
Ha!
Yeah.
That's cute. Mr. Wright,
I turned
you
myself.
I didn't ask you to say anything. All were now, so you were on bond for criminal mischief and a criminal trespass. And the bonds were at 5,003. So that indicates to me that you've taken off those numerous times or some other kind of issue. You've now picked up a third case of another criminal mischief. We're going to do probable cause. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can or will be used against you. Wait, so this is from 3-5. Are we done? You see on this?
So not for the newer case.
Stop. I don't need your help.
For the criminal mischief,
The new one.
correct.
Was it a 2B?
Yes, a 2B was issued, yes, it was an open warrant for a little while.
Mr. Wright, you're charged with another criminal mischief. We're going to do probable cause. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can or will be used against you. You have the right to have an attorney present during questions and interviews with the state of Texas. If you cannot afford a lawyer be appointed to represent you, sir.
Judge, on March 5th, 2024, officers were dispatched to a family disturbance call in Harris County, Texas. Officers made contact with the complainant witness who stated her brother, the defendant, came to her apartment to bring food for his toddler son that was staying with the complainant witness. The complaining witness stated that the defendant became upset and angry at her after she told the defendant that he could not use her car. Complaining witness stated she told the defendant she was going to call the police if he did not leave her apartment. The defendant then attempted to grab the complaining witness's phone. The complaining witness then went to her neighbors and called the police, and the defendant followed and kicked the neighbor's front door, but then walked back inside the complaining witness' house and broke a glass coffee table by throwing it on the floor and attempted to break the complaining witness's TV. But the complaining witness's 18-year-old son was able to stop the defendant from doing so. The defendant then went outside and began to kick the garage door in an attempt to open it to get to the complaining witness's vehicle. The complaining witness's 9-year-old daughter witnessed the defendant kick the garage door multiple times, which caused it to be bent and off the rails. The total value of damage was $500.
What do we do with the person who continually fails to live up to the conditions that we put? Not without a lawyer. What I'm going to do now, though, is I'm keeping you. You will stay with me. I will appoint you a lawyer, and we are going to figure out what to do with you, Mr. Wright. But you have some anger issues that we need to get through. We need to get to
my programs. I just had turned my programs in. I was going to my programming today. I got it on my phone. They told me to go to West Alma today. Go to 5:30. I was really going today. I was really going, sir.
You know how many times I heard that?
I get all that, but I was really going now.
You know how many times I heard that?
I understand, sir.
So he goes with you.
I think John is pointing
Yeah.
out his other two.
We'll contact John and then figure out.
Okay, so we scienced. So basically, if I stand, if I do this, I could go that way to Vaughan. That was a loud yawn. That's funny. But if I was going like this, I would have to have an insane amount of force to do that. Because of where the bones fall. So I used the nail file, and like this, it could, but that doesn't explain the back. That's one that I can't quite wrap my head around. So, Trish, I get what you're saying. What I can't figure out is if she was saying, like, don't, like, get away from me, and is holding it super tight so that he can't grab it from her, maybe. But considering she has the history of trying to do that, this stance would make more sense, right? Like, she's going to go to her. He comes at her as she's... But then it's the bones. I don't... I really wish that they would make it clearer. Maybe they will tomorrow. Tomorrow's medical examiner. Tired of correcting my mistakes. Don't even worry. Jury will be doing experiments in the jury room as long as they have like a very blunt nail file to do the experiments. Because her thing is that he ran into it. So when I tried that now, like this would work. And it would also work if she was going like to go like that and he ran. But the force would not work that way. It would only work like that. And they were right by a door. Tomorrow we're going to have to, if the medical examiner doesn't answer these things, we're going to have to Canva it, or I'm going to have to put in a call to the cousin that was here with the trauma surgery. We're going to have to figure it out because it is going to bother me if they don't answer this question. I need to know more. Okay, I'm going to put Judge Flesh on for a little bit more. But I'm saying literally 10 minutes. Then I need to end the stream. And I'm only saying that because I need to make sure that Judge Simpson's recording is going. But I've got to carry on getting ready for bed at the same time. I think that the problem with his mic is that he was trying to figure out why it was so loud. Look at her little face. He was trying to figure out why it was so loud, and so something went wrong, I think. Because I was in his chat yesterday, just popped in to say, hi, can't mod today. I'm watching a trial. And there were so many comments about the mic.
Where did Eric go?
To ask for Mona what is the sound.
Okay. Well,
Yes, sir. Shall I know what the ring is?
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. Approaching, it's actually off doctor on Mr. Chua. We discussed him yesterday. He's here present with his son. He just wanted to make sure that he was okay on the payment plan for his PTI.
Am I bringing him up?
I don't mind at all. Okay. No, just
So who's charged? Dad or son?
Dad.
Dad. Okay. So I don't know why son is.
249-009.
How about it? I don't know.
Judge Ramona said that you could be heard now. It was good.
We need to move that because see, since they're on top of it, they're not getting heard. Because if you're within like, I think was it 10 inches of that mic, there's a dead zone. So we can put that one back and we can use, just put it on right there. Yeah. And then this is your one. This should help. Okay. Zoom is supposed to be able to do the thing, but if YouTube is not allowing it, then we'd have to put like one single good mic.
We'll see. Hopefully this will, Ramona, I guess will you give me a heads up? Oh, thank you. Um, Okay. Can you give me the cause number?
Yes, sir. 249-0090.
So refresh my memory, but
Just pausing to say that it's kind of funny that I was giving the judge tech support in my chat to do with mics the other day.
It's on the trial docket.
Right.
The criminal mischief case. We've had an agreement with the state for a 6-month PTI. Only condition is restitution is $2,500. The court asked Mr. Chua to be here today to ensure that he's able to pay that, which I've spoken to him about his monthly income versus expenses. And he's good to go on that, but you wanted him to come to be sure that was going to happen.
today is the day of trial. Usually, if you're ready, we bring a jury in and we're ready to go into trial. You have worked out an agreement. This is something that should have been done a very, very long time ago, not 8 months later. So I'm keeping you on a very strict schedule as far as payment is concerned. And the one time you start to play games with me, you will go to trial. I will not play games with you. Do you understand, Mr. Chua?
Yes, Your Honor.
What do you do for a living, sir?
I've been a retired organ transplant nurse since 2017, but I've been sick of pneumonia and then the COVID, so I decided to retire.
He does get retirement, Your Honor, monthly.
Okay. How are you planning on getting $2,500 to pay restitution?
If I may, Your Honor, he gets $2,100 in retirement per month.
Yes.
And he works out his expenses to about $600 per month. And so he has a surplus of $1,500 minus a couple expenses. And with the $2,500 over 6 months, it's about $400 a month. And so he says it's going to be tight, but he's confident he can make it work. Also, for the court's information, we've gotten his insurance involved, and I've been talking to his adjuster on possibly helping us out. But I told him to assume that's not going to happen and to be prepared to pay for it himself, which he can, but we also have that backup plan as well.
I'm not going to play games with you. I want you to understand that at the first time that you stop paying or you don't pay as you're supposed to pay, you will immediately be set for trial and this deal goes away.
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you understand? I have way too much drama in my life. I don't need any more. I don't need to babysit another case. I already have 2,500 cases that I babysit. Do you understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
So how, because they can't take the money. I don't know how.
They're emergency set up to do that through the probation office, Your Honor. He has a meeting scheduled August 20th. It's his first meeting.
So if by August 20th, he should make at least 2 payments then.
Whatever he's worked out with probation.
What about the complaining witness in this case? Who is the complaining witness?
Neighbor of his lives a couple houses down.
Okay. Don't have any contact with these people as well.
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you understand? As part of this agreement, I want to make sure that they don't have contact and that he doesn't have any weapons as well. Okay? And then let's revisit this in the month, Shatoria, and let's figure out how, or I guess, you said August 30th
20th, Your
or
Honor.
28th?
20th.
20th. So let's regroup that August 26th and let's see how he's done. By that time, he should have at least 2 payments into the registry. Okay? if you make these payments as you're supposed to, this case will be dismissed. Okay? But no games. You understand? Okay? Good luck to you, Mr. Chua. All right, thanks. No, not all, just the two old ones. Yeah, you know what? I don't even think you should get a PR bond on the new one too. I mean, he's got two open cases. There are 5,003 and then he picks up another one. Yeah, no PR bond. Let me take a look at it. Give me a second. Stephen, no more arraignments?
Only had only 5 arraignments today, 3 showed up.
Any THAs?
No PHAs today?
No, okay.
The only thing we have is one bond violation that we're waiting for the attorney, and just the attorney's waiting. I know when she's done, I think she had maybe an admonishment.
Got it. Okay, you know what? I need to call that lawyer.
So this is. No, I know. Saying how busy. Yeah, you need to use your.
She goes in. Yep. For sure. I hope he pays it. Shatoria, can I give you a cause number, please? You ready? 233-7303. Yeah, so we went to trial on this case and the defendant lost. He appealed it. And then recently the decision came down where the appeal was denied. So they upheld, the guilty finding by the jury. Yeah, Damian Lewis, Jones, you're right. So he didn't do anything on purpose. He hasn't done anything. I mean, right?
I would like to see a profile for probation created worse.
Yeah, you know what? They didn't even post an appeal bond. I mean, the case, it's just been, yeah. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get in contact with the defense lawyer and say, hey, look, your guy has to come in. The appeal was Right, so you got to come in and he's got to start doing probation. And then I'm going to give him a date certain to come in, and if we don't, then we issue the bench warrant. So just be prepared. Hopefully they show up. Hey, Mr. Jones, this is David Fleischer, Judge Fleischer, Court 5. We need to have your client come in, Damian Jones, so that he can start probation because of the appeal denial. Would you please give me a call back, 832-927-3200. That is the court's number. You can also feel free to email one of us or try to get a hold of me somehow. I'm reaching out to you so that we can set a date for him to come in to start doing the probation. I was thinking probably, since I know he's probably flying in, I was thinking perhaps August 12th for you guys to come in and meet with us here. Please give me a call back. Thanks and have a great day. Oh, that's the court's phone. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
To show you this video. I told Lone Wolf I would show you.
Birthday. Victoria said I needed to give you a shout out because it's your birthday, and I'm giving you a shout out because Victoria said it's your birthday, and I needed to say happy birthday. So happy birthday. If I didn't, McCracken, Phil McCracken, happy birthday. Happy birthday, Phil.
He just
Everybody
realizes
say,
it.
everybody say happy birthday, Phil.
Look at him.
I feel like I'm getting talked.
So he made a short of it.
That's funny.
He said he would make
I
a
love that
short
guy.
if I promised to show you the video.
That's funny.
Judge, we have one court admonishment today.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember this guy.
No, I don't remember anything. You gotta refresh my memory and everything.
Okay.
I don't remember. I never.
You know what the cause number
Yeah.
is?
Yeah. Let me pull up in the window. Okay, what is it?
243
Okay.
10660.
Oh, crap. I didn't even put it. Okay, sorry.
243
Hmm.
10660.
Cassidy?
Yes, so we actually stopped him about a month ago. This is the guy who's working on like a towing boat. So he works 28 days like offshore, and then he's only here for 14 days. When he first got on probation, he did SATF, he did the aftercare, so IOP, SOP, he did the victim impact panel. But now that he's back working, he hasn't been able to do the repeat offenders course or his community service. So they let him off the boat today to come to court. But he told me he's leaving on the 1st. So we still have to do.
Come up, Mr. Cassidy. When does he expire?
September 16th. So they wanted to do a 6-month extension.
Why? I mean, he still has until September. Why do an extension? You know why you're here, right?
Yeah, because I haven't completed a class.
You haven't done a bunch of stuff. And in lieu of me filing a warrant or issuing a warrant and putting your butt in jail, we kind of have like a come to Jesus meeting now in an effort to try to get you to understand that if you don't get this done, I will put you in jail. You're looking at 6 months. And then what happens? You lose your job. So something has to change because the way things have been going now, it's not working. What's going to change?
She said I have one class that I have to do.
You have 30 hours of community service. You have your DWI repeat offender class. That in and of itself is 32 hours.
Yes, sir. On the 12th, is my next time off for 10 days, and I told her that I would complete the community service then. The way she was having me do everything, she said, well, she was pushing for me to wait till the end to do the community service. I don't know why. But that's just what she was pushing for. And having me get some of these other classes done. And then on the class, I just got where I was scheduled working on a permanent boat to where I'm going to look and see about getting Wi-Fi so I can do the classes online on the boat because I work offshore.
You know, they have the devices that you can take with you where it's kind of like a satellite Wi-Fi signal so that you can do it remotely from anywhere in the world. You know, it would probably behoove you to look into that.
That's what I just got off the boat yesterday. I had another case in Hudson County and I had to pay it off so I could get off the probation. So I've been riding over.
You're on probation for what else?
The DWI in Harris County, I mean, not Harris, in Hutchinson County.
How many DWIs do you have open?
So there's two, or is there 2 or 3?
How do you not know?
Because they ran one together, and I think it's 2. I'm on 3. I was on 3 probations. The one on, I don't remember what court it is.
In what alternate universe do you think that you can be on multiple 2, if not 3 probations, and you fail to live up and there's no jail time involved?
I'm completing.
Mr. Cassidy.
I'm completing them. The Harris County one, I mean, not the Harris, the Hudson County one. I'm completing that. I said get off of it in a couple days.
I don't give a rat's behind about to complete.
And then you sent me to the rehab. I completed the rehab. I completed one previous class. I paid the other one off the $3,000. I'm on a monitor. I pay my monitor. I haven't failed no urine test. I haven't failed. I've gone to
What monitor
probation.
do you have now?
The glow monitor
Where is it?
in the car.
How often do you drive?
I don't drive.
So you're not using the monitor.
No, I do. I use it all the time in the car. That's the one they told me to get. That's the one I got. I blow in it all the time. I'm not failing none of them. Like anytime I go somewhere, my wife drives. We get in the car. I blow in the monitor. I pay for the monitor. I'm trying here. I'm really trying. I've got a lot that I have to pay for and a lot of stuff like that. And then I was laid off and I haven't been able to
Mr.
afford
Cassidy, the easiest solution is don't get into a car and drive.
Yes, sir.
And the thing is
I'm on a
that
affidavit, sir, to not to drive. I don't have a driver's license. I don't drive. I don't drink anymore. You sent me to the rehab. Ever since you've done that, I've been trying to.
Mr. Cassidy, what happens if you pick up another DWI?
Oh, I'm going to prison.
Right.
So like I said, I just give it all up. The last time I was in there, I actually put me on a monitor. You sent me to rehab, which helped significantly.
When do you go back to the boat?
The 1st, and I'll get off the 12th. I just took off to come to court.
So
because
that's
they said-
you get back on the boat in 2 days.
Yes, sir. And then I get off the 12th. And I'll be off 10 days from the 12th to the 22nd.
So
And that's when
you
I'm gonna-
you get off the boat on the 12th.
Yes, sir. And I was gonna do start my community service, then in 30 hours, I can get it all done before I go back to 22nd of August.
How I don't even know how we're gonna do the education course.
I would recommend doing the DWI education class during that week, that 10 days that he's here. If you do it online, you would really have to find somebody who's gonna let you miss at least 2 classes.
So that's the thing. I was trying to find out a class where I could do it while I came in, and they said that's impossible because if I miss one class, because
See, these classes are structured in a way,
Yes, sir.
there's a particular schedule you're supposed to conform to.
Yes, sir.
That's the way it's structured. That's the way that you're supposed to learn from it.
Yes, sir.
It's not supposed to be your way, it's their way.
I understand.
So what you need to do now is you need to go find Wi-Fi that you can take with you on the boat.
Yes, sir. That was my next stop. I just got off the boat.
Now, can he do the
Online.
repeat offender online? Okay.
I'm trying to figure it out, sir.
So I'm giving you the way now before I issue the warrant.
Yes, sir.
Because I'm going to make notations about how many DWI probations you're on. If you fail me one more time, because you've already failed me now, and I'm bringing you in an effort to give you the opportunity to straighten up and fly right.
Yes, sir.
If you do not, with how many DWIs I'm going to hammer you. Forewarned is fair warned.
Yes, sir.
Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
When you leave right now,
Yes, sir.
I want you to either go to Verizon, go to T-Mobile, go to AT&T and find out about Wi-Fi that you can take with you everywhere you go.
Yes, sir.
So you can get this class done.
Yes, sir.
I want you to enroll now in the DWI education class. You have until the 22nd of this month to have the education class done. Of next month, sorry.
Yes, sir.
Until August, because that gives you from now until August 22nd.
I want to say the class is like 9 weeks long.
It's
9 or 12 weeks long.
7 to 8 weeks.
Yes,
right?
Oh, 7 to 8 weeks. Okay. The one I called, they said it was 9 or 12 weeks long. Oh, you okay? Thank you, ma'am. And do you know how much? I mean, no, they don't tell you how much.
I don't know how
She
much.
said it was
they
like
cost.
$400 or $500 to do it. I just didn't know.
DWI is not cheap, man.
I understand that. I've paid.
$15 on an Uber will get you anywhere you want to go,
Yes, sir.
no matter where you want to go.
I understand.
If anything you've learned from anything, use Uber.
Yes, sir.
Anytime I go out, because I like to go out with my wife, go out to eat, and I like to drink.
Yes, sir.
And I always take an Uber.
Yes, sir.
Every single time I go out, because it's not worth it. I want to give him enough time, but I'm not going to give you an open invitation anymore. We tried that, it's not worked. So now I'm going to have to sit here and micromanage you to make sure it gets done before we issue the warrant. So what is a reasonable time that we can give him that he can have the education class?
I would say maybe like- Do you have funds right now? Like this financial?
Right now, I just sent, I got one more payment of $1,000 to send to the other one, then I'm off of that. And as soon as I get done with that, I can start paying for the course. I have like,
When is that due over there?
I should get paid again on the 7th, and I'm gonna send my last $1,000 payment, and I get off of that. And then as soon as I get off of that, I was gonna start paying for this. When I first got out, I didn't have a license. I didn't have a ride to get to work. It's taking me a while, and I had to pay for the monitor.
So tell me a date next month that you can sign up for the DWI education class. And I mean, does he have to pay all at once or
I have
does
to.
he go?
Most of the time they will.
Sir, I want to say they said I could pay like half of it and then half of it when I get done, but I have to find a date that the class is allowing people to enroll. I have to start calling. I have no idea when they allow, because they do like an enrollment like every
Okay,
month
so
or
let's
every
do
6
this.
weeks. I have to
Let's
figure
do
it out.
this. I want you to come back to me August 12th, and I want you to tell me what class you've enrolled into.
That's the day I
You
get
get
off.
back, right?
I get off the boat.
We'll come back the 13th.
Can I, 13th to the 14th, somewhere in there?
Sure.
I don't know what time I get off the boat. Like yesterday, I didn't get off until 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was all the way.
Pick a
to
day,
Corpus.
the week of the 12th. I want you back here, but I want you to have signed up for the education class.
Sometime the week of the 12th, 13th, 14th.
Right, you can
Okay.
come here, but I want you to have signed up for the class.
I'll look into it today. Right now I got about, I want to say I got $800. I'm gonna go and I just paid everything. I'm gonna go and try and look into the Wi-Fi
Cassidy,
thing.
I don't want to break your bank and that's
I know,
what I'm
I'm-
time. But at the same time, I don't want to issue a warrant for your
Yes,
arrest.
sir. I don't want you to.
Right. Okay? Okay. All right, you're gonna meet with Shatoria and then good luck to you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Hey,
I'm here on the regular scene. I'm gonna go through them yesterday so he can go home and get the documentation.
okay, where's Mr. Garcia? Come on up. You come here empty-handed. That's not a good sign.
Well, and Judge, he did send it to me
Oh,
electronically.
okay.
And I'll show it to the state. So here's all of this financial aid stuff. I would have printed it out.
So you're telling me now that he's enrolled into school?
Yes, he's working on his GED and here's the.
This is when I just recently took my language arts part. I'm clearing for
So-
my math currently.
And he's studying for his math.
When is the test?
I just got there, I recently took my language arts, I'm studying for my math now,
Okay.
so as soon as I can
Wait,
get.
wait, so how did it go with language arts? Fantastic. So only one thing is left, which is the math.
3 more subjects, which is social studies, science, and like the math.
Okay, so you're doing math now. When is the test?
As soon as I can feel ready to get to the passage, so I don't have to waste money on doing it.
Judge, I think it's where when you're ready, you can schedule a test, not like the bar exam where it's only authorized.
Okay. So let's get a date certain that you want to take the test, that you can study why. I don't want to just leave an open invitation. So you guys talk about it and tell me what day you want to take the test, perhaps 2 weeks from today.
Okay.
That way it gives you enough time to study. And then after that, we'll start working on the next section.
Thank you. Can we be
All right.
excused and we'll be-
Please. Yeah. Thanks. Hey, what's up? Of course. Pretty good. Great. Yeah.
I finished 2 hearings in protective order court across the street yesterday. And
Did you go to the 280th?
yes,
And
and it was exhausting. So happy to be
It's-
back on this side of the street.
who's the judge there now?
It is Judge Kirby.
Oh, Diane Kirby. Okay. All right.
But one of the, I guess, representing the applicant in the case was Judge Stolder. So interesting hearing.
So you went against Judge or Barbara Stalter?
Yes,
Wow.
and
And
well, both were gracious.
she's
to me.
tenacious, man.
She's very good. And
She was, you know, she was the judge
Yeah, she was the
prior,
judge.
right?
And so it made for an interesting hearing. But it's an interesting dynamic where you don't have much discovery to work with and have to figure out what to ask with the affidavit. that-
Basically, it's whether they're going to grant this a protective order, right? And the thing is that they can do what, 5-year, 2-year, lifetime protective orders. I find that just nuts.
Well,
I just, I don't even get me started.
and the provisions of the family code allow for determinations like custody or access to the children. So there's provisions where a judge can, for lifetime, say, you can't have contact with the children. And on a reasonable grounds to believe standard and with no discovery.
Well, what is this? What is this standard? What?
Well, under 7B of the Code of Criminal Procedure, the standard is reasonable grounds to believe that you had engaged in stalking, different enumerated.
So would that be a preponderance standard?
Well, no, I think.
Clear and convincing?
No, I think it's just reasonable grounds to believe. So effectively.
What does that mean?
Reasonable, reasonable suspicion, I suppose. And because.
That's such a low standard though.
So, no, it is a low standard. And so there's an argument that's being raised in the Texas Supreme Court, because those are civil matters, that saying you can't see your children for the rest of your life, that constitutes a termination. And termination usually requires clear and convincing evidence.
Yeah, no,
And
right.
so But I don't know if it's the First or 14th Court of Appeals in denying relief on that claim. PDR's been granted. They said, well, no, your rights haven't been terminated because you still have access to calling their lawyer to see how the kids are doing, and you can still get their grades and education records. And so it's not a full.
When I was practicing, I did one and I found it to be a very frustrating experience. I don't even want to get into it, but it was very, very frustrating. So
The moral of the story is don't go to the too late.
I like Judge Kirby. I've not had anything in front of her, but you know.
No, she was wonderful to me.
Great.
And
As long as you're fair, that's I guess all you can ask for, right?
yes.
Yeah.
And she listened to my very long-winded arguments about a number of matters, and I appreciated her patience with me on that. But I've got Mr. Russell on your docket, Judge, and he's on the jail docket.
Okay.
And I think we have exceeded your 180 mark.
It's nearing 200.
Yes.
Does he have a felony case upstairs?
He does. It's recently filed. And that is
Is there
assault on a friend.
Are you representing him upstairs?
Not upstairs. But my only request would be that I'll be here on the September 10th, because I've got 2 trials scheduled in your court on that date. I'd ask that.
For that day?
He be set, I'm sorry.
You want to set it?
Not for trial, but set it for a setting on that day. That way I can at least have one setting in the felony court to see what's going on.
Look, he's on bond in our court,
Yes.
right? So if you need it, I'm happy to acquiesce. Jason, on the assault of a pregnant person, do they have an offer? On Mr. Russell's case? Yeah, it's a fresh case. It's from June, so it's.
Right.
Okay, yeah, we'll just set you for the 10th,
Okay.
assuming that's not a Saturday.
And then if we don't have it resolved on that day, I'll set it for trial on that day.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Do you have an offer in this case? Yeah. There's.
Time served, 9 days, there's now.
Got it. Yeah, he's already got plenty of time.
Yeah. Well, it's not, because they don't have a.
Brian, do you want me to revoke the bond or do you want to leave him on bond so he's earning credit?
No, we'd like to stay where it's at.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Hi, Trinidad. Good morning. Which Henderson?
Young man at a GD.
Which one?
Marion Anderson.
The one we arraigned earlier, Judge.
No, he has a lawyer. He is John. It must be a mistake. He already has John. Henderson, Demarion that we just took in. John's representing him on 2 cases already.
John was representing right had 3 cases.
Oh, I'm thinking of the wrong. Okay. I'm sorry, Trinidad, my fault. I was thinking of right. Sorry. Oh, no, I didn't take him into custody. He's right over there. Okay, I thought you said took him into custody.
GD situation. If he's doing the GD and he sends me verification, or you need to be here.
No, I'm keeping him so close to me. Nope. I want to make sure he's on the up and up and he's doing right.
What day did you talk? 2 weeks from now? Or did you give him a date? or not?
Yeah, no, not yet. Whatever you want,
All right, thank you.
for sure. look at your phone. Look at your phone. The phone.
Mr. Briscoe.
Yeah. Hi, Logan. Good morning.
The procedure is a separate MRP on the first, the officer's unavailable, already.
You don't need, we don't need the officer. Don't worry. He's on probation and that's not something where we're gonna need the officer. It's just, oh, and I'm not saying that. No, I'm just saying that I'm having a hearing as to whether he violated his probation. We don't need the officer.
Okay, I thought I would need the officer to testify as to.
No, no, you're good.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Thanks. And thanks for thinking of that. Yeah, but no.
Just for Wright's case, where you wanted to wait on John to see what it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, friends, this is a good spot for me to pause and say goodnight because it is 11:30 and I said at 11 I was going to go to bed. But we can potentially, depending on how tomorrow is going, I've got a sore on the side of my head and it's really annoying me now. Depending on how tomorrow is going, we might be able to do a little bit of court watching before, a little bit of this court watching before we go into the other one. Okay. So let me see if there's anyone to redirect to at this moment. We can all raid the same place. Recovery Addict's still live. Oh, do you know what? Colin Cromwell, who's also a mod in Judge Fleischer's chat, has an upcoming live. And I've never redirected to him. Oh gosh, that's at 2 a.m. That is frustrating. I'm hesitant to send you to Recovery Addict because then Verdict Watch. So Steve, are they watching Random Court or is it a panel? You know, I could just open it myself. But am I doing that? No, because apparently it's easier to ask chat on a mad delay. There's a jury question currently. Okay. Almost got Trish to pee herself. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't know where to direct to, but I do need to go to bed because I still have a day job, and then this as well. Oh, there may be a ghost on camera too. Yeah, I think we may all just need to find. I was so hoping there was someone watching something unrelated, because I could portal you to Judge Manning. But I think that might be a bit weird. All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow. It'll be the same time as today, potentially, but you'll hopefully see the thumbnail pop up ahead of time. Court only starts 2 hours after that, so it might be a little bit later than today. Thank you for hanging out. I am really enjoying this trial. I think that tomorrow, if we don't get answers, we're going to have to do some serious science, but I will see you then. Bye.